Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. In our 1-hour heating and air conditioning weather center, the latest with our meteorologist, Steve Williams.
Sunny for today. The high today 66. It'll be clear tonight, low 46. Plenty of sun for tomorrow and Wednesday. The high tomorrow 66. Wednesday's high 69. A bit of rain Thursday and the high at 72. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560. The Answer.
49 at O'Hare. Next news at 7:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560. The Answer.
Don't forget that you can watch Chicago's Morning Answer on the Income Store live video stream every morning at 560theanswer.com.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy, who's with me. Let's make Daryl Morey our U.S. ambassador to China. Morey is the GM for the Houston Rockets, and he tweeted out support for Hong Kong and Hong Kongans in reaction to, of course, the oppression they are feeling from Beijing and from Beijing's puppets in Hong Kong.
After he tweeted that tweet, well, he deleted the tweet, but then something happened.
We shouldn't have deleted the tweet. Fight for freedom, stand with Hong Kong. That's hardly, incendiary. It's just saying basically, stand with people who yearn to be free. sort of center cut for America to say, I would think. But of course, because his profile, the Chinese Basketball Association suspended all cooperation with the Houston Rockets, and the consulate in Houston issued a statement saying he needs to retract and clarify his statements, and so on and so forth.
So the NBA appears to choose Chinese government over human rights.
So does Yao Ming, apparently. He's the Chinese Basketball Association chairman. Hey, Yao, didn't you like your time here? And I guess as a superstar athlete, he probably was treated very well in China, but
he lives a very nice life over there.
I have no doubt. But anyway, it's nice to see that coming from the sports world, the rare note from the sports world that isn't perpetuating the ignorance of the left. For more on the topic of the Chinese, as well as some other matters, we're pleased to be joined again by Lieutenant Colonel Jim Carafano, the Vice President of the Catherine and Shelby Cullom Davis Institute of International Studies at the Heritage Foundation, author of books including Wiki at War and Private Sector Public Wars. Jim, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good to be with you.
Good to have you here again. And the president's call for the Chinese to investigate Biden, and it was sort of treated with the hysterics you'd expect from Democrats. It was dismissed by both Jim Jordan and Marco Rubio as he wasn't being serious. President Trump, that is. He's just blowing off steam. Of course, we're not going to rely on the Chinese communists to conduct in legal investigations into American politicians and trust what they would or wouldn't come up with, not to mention the rather ironic piece of that would be the Chinese investigating the Chinese, since they're reportedly the ones who pumped $1.5 billion into Hunter Biden's private equity concern there, so it doesn't make much sense from the outset. How do you sift through all that, or do you just do what most people are doing and ignore it?
Well, I think Jordan and Rubio's comments were the correct assessment, and indeed we've got plenty of precedent for that. Look, by and large, the U.S. government doesn't make policy by the president's tweets. And when we have a policy, if that was a real policy, the attorney general would send a letter to Beijing asking them to do this. So I think they're right. I mean, his public comments were just his public comments, and I think that's the end of it. I mean, it just seems the hysteria is just spiraling as the lack of evidence of actual wrongdoing kind of shrinks. So,
well, Jordan, I mean, a lot of Republican politicians have come forward saying that President Trump was joking in nature when he was talking about the Chinese investigating Biden. What do you think?
Well, again, there's plenty of precedent for that. We've seen lots of similar comments from that in the past by the president. So I think if you wanted to build a case on that comment as something inappropriate for the president, I think you'd have a really hard time doing that. Politicians say all kinds of things in public. Mm-hmm. If we started scrutinizing that from a legal perspective, we wouldn't. First of all, we wouldn't get very far because no politician would be saying anything. I mean, it's actually pretty ludicrous. I mean, when you read the Constitution about what constitutes legitimate grounds for removal, and people are saying it's a political process, but it's not. It's a constitutional process, and the Constitution's pretty clear. These are very, very extreme levels. And if you look at the people that have actually been impeached and removed from office, which are mostly judges, again, these are very, very serious things. And impeaching somebody for an offhand comment, it's just to even contemplate that is pretty ludicrous. But look, there's no problem with people criticizing the president for that. There's no problem with the other side finding it appalling. There's no problem with anybody finding it appalling if they want to. But when you to mix that with an impeachment conversation is pretty fatuous.
We were talking about retired NYU professor Stephen F. Cohen's comments on Tucker Carlson last week, on Friday night, about the intelligence community. I want you to hear what he had to say and get your reaction.
Coming down here, I asked myself, have we ever had a presidential scandal like this in America? No, I can't think of one. Then, because I study the Soviet Union as a profession, I asked myself, did the Russian secret police, the KGB, run its own operations against Soviet leaders who pursued policies they didn't like? And the answer is yes, particularly détente-related policies.
Yes.
So now I connect dots, and feel free to tell me I shouldn't connect these dots, that it's a crazy Russianist thinking. But all of this Russiagate stuff seems to have originated, and that's what Steele tells us, with intelligence agencies, American and foreign. What we don't know is why, and we need to know this, they set out to destroy Trump as a candidate in 2016 and then as a president. After all, other American presidents had pursued cooperation with Russia. What was it about Trump?
Is that the right question, Jim?
Well, I mean, there's an enormous amount of speculation there, and I'm not going to speculate on the speculation. First of all, our intelligence community is huge. There's lots of people that are doing all kinds of things, and I think we have pretty good checks and balances in the system to root out inappropriate malicious behavior. And sometimes it takes a little longer, but in the end, I think almost nothing escapes that. I mean, look at the Mueller probe. I mean, multi-years and all kinds of investigation. They found nothing. Only the United States could do that. Only the United States could have an independent prosecutor spend all that time, look at everything, and then come back and say, the president didn't do anything wrong here. So I have faith in the system. If there is inappropriate behavior, I think the system will eventually root it out.
Now, President Trump took to Twitter a lot this weekend. One tweet that he mentioned about Hillary Clinton I loved. So crooked Hillary can delete and acid wash 33,000 emails after getting a subpoena from the United States Congress, but I can't make one totally appropriate telephone call to the president of Ukraine. Witch hunt. But it wasn't that tweet that made the news. What made the news was him slamming Mitt Romney with a hashtag impeach Mitt Romney. Is it a smart political move to go after somebody who essentially later on down the road might be one of your jurors?
Yeah, well, I do policy, not politics, so I don't even have a view on that. But I think what is very clear here is when you look at this with just a basic fishing expedition of give me all the documents. Well, there's executive privilege for a reason, and executive privilege isn't a force field that immunes you from inappropriate or criminal behavior, but conversely, just an open-ended fishing expedition of give me every document ever said with every foreign leader. I mean, that's not going to fly either, and that's a horrible precedent. I mean, I see a lot of politics, and without people really thinking about the consequences of the behavior and what's actually appropriate, and it's appalling at kind of the lack in the face of the system. This system works. It's worked for decades. The legal system sometimes doesn't work in a New York minute, but eventually the truth comes out. I think lack of confidence in the legal system is either ignorance or just people playing politics.
I wanted to get to the news that broke overnight, and that's we're ceding dealing with ISIS in Syria to the Turks and possibly exposing our Kurdish allies to some reprisals from those same Turks.
I don't see it that way at all.
I'm asking the question.
Yeah. No, I think it's way premature. First of all, Turkey does have legitimate interests. It's their border. They have security concerns. They also have an enormous amount of Syrian refugees that they want to create a safe haven for them to return home. I think people often conflate the Kurds with the YPG. The Kurds are an ethnic population in Syria. Many of them are just fine people. YPG is somebody that we've worked with before, but it is not a squeaky clean Boy Scout troop that we're there to protect. So I think there's probably more facts on this to come out, and the notion that somehow we're just letting the Turks go in and slaughter our allies, I'm not sure that's the right narrative.
But if that's not the right narrative, then this is the right policy choice.
I don't know, because I'm still gathering facts on this, but all this happened over the weekend. We don't know exactly what the U.S. said. I don't know exactly what the Turks are doing on the ground. And so I just think it's premature, but we have a lot of people spinning narratives already as if they know exactly what's going on. And I don't. And if I don't say I do.
Just going back to close the loop on Hong Kong, with the protests that continue and the repressive responses from Beijing that continue, what, if anything, would you advise President Trump to do?
Well, I think the U.S. there's very little the United States can do other than support legitimate concerns for human rights violations on behalf of whether it's the Hong Kong administrator or the Chinese government. And I think rightly point out that Beijing is not trustworthy. They made an agreement under the Basic Law, one country, two systems. They have violated that agreement. They've shown very little effectiveness in helping the people of Hong Kong, which are part of the Chinese government. And I think we just need to continue to remind the world that if this is an example of how this regime behaves, it is not a regime that you can trust. It is not one respectful of human rights, and it isn't one that holds up to its obligations.
He is Lieutenant Colonel Jim Carafano, Vice President of the Catherine and Shelby Cullom Davis Institute for International Studies at the Heritage Foundation. Jim, thanks as always for being with us. Appreciate it.
That's awesome. Great questions.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Hey, Danny, we got an A+ today. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
This is Attorney Stephen Leahy, host of the IRS Radio Hour, heard right here on AM 560 every Sunday evening at 5 o'clock. Let me tell you about Bill.